Thank you for joining us. This is Paul Wilson.
And Chris Emke.
And you're listening to Diesel Performance Podcast. Chris, huge 15% off switch-on-the-fly tuning sale kicking off over at Duramax Tuner.
End of summer sale.
End of summer sale.
Cannot
wait.
Easy Link, switch on the fly. EFI Live, switch on the fly. All 15% off all month of September.
That's right. Yep. So I'm stoked. I think that's going to be a big one. Listeners, call in, ask for Chris. Your extension 2121 over at Duramax Tuner.
You got
it. You will be able to help them out.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Guys, a lot of activity lately over on Fans of Diesel Performance Podcast Facebook group. If you haven't joined that.
What a mouthful.
I know, it's so long, dude.
Jeez.
Do you remember, I think about a year ago, we went through trying to change the name of the group.
Didn't work out.
A lot of really clever suggestions that just weren't practical enough to implement, is what I would say. So thank you to everybody. Guys, hey, you're finding it. So regardless of how long we made the name, I was thinking about adding 4 more words, but we won't.
Yeah.
It works. And thank you guys all for jumping on there and participating. Chris, one of the other things that we have right around the corner is the end of sled pull season. So over on the Duramax Tuner YouTube channel, we're going to start having some of that sled pull footage and some of the videos about some of the different events we went to. Those are all going to start getting published.
Jam-packed. It's been jam-packed. We've had sled pulls at least once or twice a week. We've had a dirt drag in the mix, and then it becomes fall, and then that's drag strip weather.
That's it.
So we're going to have some fun come fall, I'm sure, as well.
I'm stoked for it. Guys, make sure you stick around. We got a full show set up for you here today. We're going to have on one of our longtime friends and coworkers, Joey Howdy Elson.
Joey Howdy Elson. What's unique about Joey is how Joey has worked with us. We'll have it in the interview. I thought it was only like 5 years, and then I think about it, I've been here 8. He was about a year after me, so 7 years. And how he's held off in getting into anything with some technology behind it, if you will, and he's stood his ground with an old mechanical 12-valve truck.
I'll tell you what, for somebody, it is funny to see how different people will succumb to peer pressure in different ways because we work in a culture of a lot of peer really pressure. Bad ideas. Yeah. A lot of people telling you to do things that
I'm usually the victim of that.
Not maybe in your best financial interest. A lot of fun, but probably not the best for your pocketbook. And Joey, instead of doing what the rest of us have done at some point, which is go out and make a really huge, stupid financial decision, is he's just slowly chipped away at his love.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the best way to phrase it.
I mean, this interview doesn't do the truck or Joey justice, right? Like you don't get to experience seeing Joey come in and out of the office every day, driving the truck, or the 7 years of seeing that truck in the parking lot. Like he does take good care. He takes pride, which is something that any of our listeners, right? Anyone that's a true diesel enthusiast or just an enthusiast in whatever your field is, you take pride in what you do, and that's that passion, right? That's that drive. That's what makes you do the things you do with that given interest that you have. And I mean, someone will look at this 12-valve truck and be like, oh, yeah, it's a 30-year-old truck. But to Joey, it's something special.
It's a labor of love, man.
He takes care of it. He operates it. He goes on long trips with this thing. He works this thing. He works on the thing, wrenches on the thing, and it's cool to see that passion.
That's right. Well, hey, we're going to kick it over to hearing about that passion right now. Joey Elson, how the hell are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Man, this is your first time, isn't it?
It is.
Man, we're popping his V card.
So Joey has worked with us over at Calibrated Power and Duramax Tuner.
6 years? 5 years?
Coming up on 7 now, 2015. So this is 6.5 years now or so.
Damn.
So we know Joey pretty well. We've worked with you for a long time. You started in customer service, moved into a sales role, work with some of the larger accounts at Duramax Tuner, but you also have always had a passion for diesel, is my general understanding.
Yeah, I started at a little shop in Union, actually, where Paul grew up, and I used to drive the shop truck, which was an old first gen, and at that point, I didn't even know what diesels were, basically.
Other than it was loud and obnoxious, right?
Yeah, well, that was the thing. The exhaust had fallen off that truck, and I loved driving it. And I went to he said to go do an oil change or something, and I popped the hood, and I thought for sure it'd be a V8 because of the way they sounded. Yeah. It was a straight 6, and I was just super confused.
Yeah, right.
And another old guy I did side jobs for had a first gen as well, and it ended up coming up for sale, and I bought that off of him, and pretty much all I knew to do was put diesel fuel into it, and that's pretty much how it all started.
That's it, man. I love when the beginning of like getting into diesel performance is literally just jumping in somebody else's truck who also thinks not a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
Like they weren't like, oh no, this is my super special truck. This is a big deal. They were just like, yeah, go take the truck and go do this.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden you jump in and you're like, oh shit, I just got bit.
Well, I think it's like, if someone tells you, oh, this is like super special, like it kind of detours you, like, yeah, I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But when you get into something that has there's no prep work for it to be special to you, and it clicks, right? And then you resonate with it, and you're like, oh, this is my happy place. Like, this is what I enjoy. You know, those things come when you least expect it. And that's pretty much, working as a shop hand in the shop, driving around an old 12-valve tow truck or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, that was exactly it.
Then you're hooked.
That's it. And then we got Howdy. So Joey, I want you to kick us off here. Give us a little bit of your background with the current truck you have, because you have this 12-valve that we talk about at the shop all the time. And guys, we're going to have some photos up on the Facebook group and on the Facebook page of Joey's truck here so you guys can take a look at it. But why don't you give our listeners a rundown? Tell us about your 12-valve.
Well, I've had that truck for about 11 years now. It was my first vehicle in high school and everything. And, picked it up. It was a rust bucket, had a big old lift gate on it, little pizza cutter tires. It was originally the A518 automatic, so no lockup, so just screaming all the time, just awful. And let's see. Yeah, through high school, didn't really play with it too much. Had a bunch of electrical issues with it, which first gens are known for. And I pretty much went through probably my last 6 months of high school with only 3 gears in that truck because the ECM fried on it, and I didn't know how to fix it, so just rode around with 3 gears, no heated intake or anything. I had to wait in the parking lot for 15-20 minutes after school to let it warm up before it would even move under its own power because the trans just was awful.
Not happy.
And after that, probably... I eventually fixed it all, but I bypassed everything with switches. Didn't fix anything properly because I was still learning. And, fast forward a few years, and I had it running pretty good. Started here, and that's when things really kind of started to take off. I kind of started realizing the potential of the truck, and ended up doing a NV 4500 manual swap on it. Stole that out of a second gen. So it's got a South Bend single disc organic clutch in it. Just your typical maxed out VE pump, which we're going to upgrade here soon because it's leaking fuel. So we're going to play with that some and do some different injectors and all the sporting mods like that. But no, overall, it's been an awesome truck for me. It's really never let me down. Back in high school, I rolled it. And put a fresh body on it.
Rolled it, like crashed it.
Yeah, like we were on the way to get Little Caesars Pizza, and it wasn't in 4-wheel drive during a snowstorm because I was too lazy to lock the hubs. And flipped her over in a ditch, and it was upside down for about an hour and a half before the tow truck was able to upright it. And police and fire and tow truck were like, it's not going to start. It's been upside down. It's been hydrolocked. Yeah. And they already charged me like $250 to flip it over and pull it out of the ditch. I was like, let me see if it'll start. And hop in and, fired right up. It's spewing oil everywhere because at that point it had a stack that had broken off in the bed from the roll. And so showered oil everywhere, idled out, and all the it was still an automatic, so all the trans fluid had leaked out on top of the turbo. So when it was upside down, it was just like plumes of white smoke.
Yeah.
And everybody thought it was going to catch on fire, and it didn't. So, and of course, it being a Dodge, you always have spare trans fluid with you. So I poured like the 3 quarts I had in there, and I was able to limp it home. Well, first we got the pizza, but they had to remake it because it had been a while since we ordered. So we got the pizza. I drove her home, and it was missing most of the glass because it was upside down and everything was smashed, and some interesting looks to say the least. And cruising at maximum like 35 miles per hour, it was a good time.
So I love so many parts of this story. We're going to back up. We're going to break some of this down for you guys. Number one, I want to talk about getting the truck in stock form and then starting to work on it once you started to hear it at Calibrated Power. Joey, we, especially back then, we worked on almost all of the diesels out there that, like, are not 12 valves. That's like exclusively one that we've just very recently have like turbo support for over the last few years. Why did you want to start to upgrade the power in the first place? What like did you get? I can't remember. Did you get big tires on it, and then it was like, oh, it's even more doggish than usual? Like, was it just, oh, I see fast trucks at work, so I'll make my rust bucket fast? Like what was it that got you moving on wanting to get more performance out of the truck?
Well, back, I guess, before or after high school and before working here, I had played with the pump, and I had watched a lot of like YouTube videos of like what you could kind of do to these trucks, and
That's how I learned.
And I had tried to play with it, and I turned up the VE pump and stuff, and it didn't really seem to do much. And I started here, and with the help of like Owen, our old tech, playing with some other stuff on it, I was able to further play with that VE pump, and at that point, and once I did the 5-speed swap too, there was like a huge difference in actually putting power to the ground. And that's kind of what started is like, okay, this thing actually really does have some potential. And Owen, again, he had that old 12 valve himself that he parted out, and he had a compound turbo kit sitting in the cab of one of the other trucks full of dirt and grime and dust and what have you. And I bought that off him, and I put that on mine, and I mean, yeah, it just.
Oh my God,
off.
I forgot about the twin kit. Was that like the pie cuts too? That wasn't like a bent tubing, right?
Oh no, it was totally homemade. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's.
What I've always liked about the first gens is like, because that's like kind of how I got my start, you know, with playing with this stuff, and everything is super versatile. Like you could work on that truck very easily. You understand what goes where, very very simplistic.
Yeah.
Right. So you know, Joey, you had said you had crashed the truck.
Yep.
Right. And you rehabbed it. Right?
Yep.
And then when we're talking about the turbo kits, like. You put the twin turbo kit on the truck, you ran it, and you've done other upgrades, and it's like snap of a finger, twin kit's off, new turbo's on.
Yeah.
Like, you were able to do things and work on that truck in a sitting.
Yes.
You know, the conversion kit to do the manual wasn't like it's a big job. Don't get me wrong. I'm not downplaying it, but you know, the simplicity factor is really in your favor.
It is.
Do you think that like that's part of one of the reasons why you, like, granted you've had the truck since high school, sentimental value, but
Yes.
like you wanting to tinker with it, is it because it is so, you know, friendly to work on, and you know you have that ability to, you know, do what you need to without any like real specialty tools and like things like that? What does that stuff look like?
Yeah, I mean, the first 12 valves in general, I mean, they're an awesome starter truck because, for one, they're cheap. They're easy to work on. There's YouTube videos of everything you can do to those, and they're pretty forgiving. Like, I definitely screwed up stuff, and I was like, oh, better go and do that. And, you know, the trucks didn't care, whereas with your common rails, like, well, that could have been a blown piston or...
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the 12 valves are forgiving. I mean, they're very robust, obviously, and I mean, even if you blow up a whole engine, well, go pick up another one for $1,500.
Right.
That's hard to beat when we're talking about diesel, right?
Yeah,
I
it is.
remember when I was on YouTube learning how to turn up the pump, right, with
Yeah.
the fuel screw and the fuel pin, and then I wanted to advance the timing, and I see this guy with a fucking ratchet strap ratcheting one from the pump over to the other engine hook, and you know that's how you adjust the timing. That's one of the approaches there, and I had to watch like 3 or 4 videos to make sure like, you know, this is real. You know,
It's not a prank video just
No,
to see who
yeah,
will
yeah.
do it. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll tell you what, that woke that thing up, man. That thing was rowdy.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, afterwards.
Yeah, it's just silly stuff like that. You know, it's
Well, the
Sky's
twin
the
kit.
limit.
Let's talk about the twin kit. So
Yeah.
the twin kit you end up putting on it, that was after the NV4500?
Yeah, so once I did the NV4500 swap, I ran it as the stock H1C for probably a year and a half or so, and then crashed it again. This time, at least, it wasn't my fault. Somebody not paying attention to the road, evidently, pulled out of his driveway right in front of me, and I took off his front end, and went into an oak tree after that, which is what really wrecked the truck. So I had the whole front clip off, and I had the compound kit sitting around, and I was like, well, that was a good time. So polished up the turbos.
Comes out of resurrection.
Yeah.
Just-
What'd you do
Yep.
for the turbos in that?
So stock H1C, and then it was a S366 over top of it.
Okay.
So, I mean, pretty small as far as compound kits go, but for a stock VE pump, that's still way more than enough air for that pump.
Sure. How'd it drive? What'd you think of it?
First time I took it for a drive, I was impressed because the stock turbo, you'd hammer on it. It was just kind of smoky and slow, just nothing real special. And the stock H1Cs are quiet as well.
Yeah.
Not really much of the turbo whistle we love and whatnot. And the compound added a lot of whistle, but actually made the truck quieter exhaust-wise. It's really like adding a muffler to it, you could say. So I was surprised by that, but I mean, yeah, the performance overall, it used all the fuel. It really wasn't smoky. I mean, you could drive that truck and it wouldn't smoke at all if you wanted.
That's essentially a gem of a piece of advice out there for you guys. If your wife is asking you why do you need a compound kit, it is essentially because it's like a front end muffler, and I think that she will grasp that and appreciate that, and that's words to live by, straight from Howdy himself.
Now with this truck, you use this truck though.
Oh yeah.
You tow some trailers. You live on a farm.
Yep.
So what's the daily workload, or what's some of the uses that you've used the truck for?
Well, I would say for a long time the most common thing was probably hay and hay wagons, which the first gens are known as being a light truck, and it didn't do great with the hay wagons because the hay wagons would push that truck around a little bit. I actually over in Bull Valley, there's a real steep hill, and I was trying to tow a hay wagon, and got halfway up the hill, and the rear tires broke loose, and so I was stuck there spinning the tires, and my hubs weren't locked in.
Oh no!
So cars were going around me, and I've got this full hay wagon, and I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Holy shit.
A guy gets out, and he's like, I've blown 3 transmissions doing exactly what you're doing. I was like, well, all right. So, and he kind of stares at me for a minute, and he's like, you want me to help you pull up the hill? I was like, yeah, I'd love that.
Wow.
So,
No. Please just sit here and watch me blow up my transmission.
Tell me how you did the 3 transes.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that he also did it 3 times. It wasn't like, hey, I did this once and learned my lesson. He's like, hey, I've done this 3 times wrong.
Yep. So he finished helping pull me up the hill. So that was an experience. So pulling hay, I got a car trailer for it now, and so tow a lot of. Hey God, I buy too many junk vehicles, so all the project cars, more hay, the tractor around here and there, the horse trailer a lot, because of course the girlfriend has horses, so 3-horse trailer, so it's like a 6,000 pound trailer, and then plus the horses, so figure fully loaded somewhere around like 8,000 or 10,000 pounds probably.
Yeah.
And it does everything. It's on 36s and 354 gears, so it's not an ideal tow set by any means.
No, but I think
So
the reason I asked that question is you get these guys that they're shopping, right? They want to get into diesel, and for me, I had experience, right? All the different generations. You get into it, and then it's like, okay, what's next? But there's a lot to be said about some of those older platforms. And I think, the versatility of those older platforms, and there's so many different ways you can go about modifying them, right?
there is, yeah.
And we're talking a truck that, we're talking almost 30 years old now.
Yeah, she's a 92.
So, next year that's a 30-year-old truck still out there. It's been rolled, crashed how many times? You've swapped this and that, but you still take this truck on longer trips, and you still work the truck.
Yep.
And it sounds like it's never left you stranded.
One time, I was a little ways from home picking up a junk tractor, of course, and the fuel shutoff solenoid started closing on me.
Okay.
And didn't know what it was at the time, so had a buddy come pick up the truck and trailer for me and everything, and got it home and found what it was, so I completely deleted that. Like everything else on the truck that malfunctioned, just get rid of it. And now it's just a pull cable.
Toggle switch nation.
Yeah, toggle switches, pull cable. There's basically the headlights are the only original switch left in that cab. So.
Oh God.
Can we, Joey? I get a lot of listeners asking about doing an NV 4500 swap. In these older trucks. It's something that's really popular because of how notoriously
the 47s and 48s.
Yeah, the Dodge transmissions are for those, right? So, can you walk us through a little bit of what that was like? You did that. Did you do that on the lift in the shop, or did you do that at home in the driveway or in the barn?
Yep, at home in the driveway. Best thing to do is to find a donor truck, I would say. I didn't, but I found a guy that was, for some odd reason, swapping from the NV to an auto. Well, actually, no, we figured it out. He put the clutch in wrong, and he put the pivot ball in the bell housing wrong, so the clutch was never fully engaging, so he thought that the manuals just couldn't hold power. Well, he installed it wrong. But benefited me, so,
So fuck him.
Yeah.
So how long was that process, start to finish? You ripping all the old shit out, mocking up the new stuff? Like, what did that process look like?
Well, and at this point, I was still kind of novice. Like, this was by far the biggest thing I'd undertaken on that truck. A lot of homework on the internet, of course, trying to find everything I could. And so you have to do a different you have to do a different adapter plate on the engine. Torque specs, too, was a big one that you don't realize that you need until you're putting it together, and you're like, hey, that probably needs a certain torque. So, but yeah, the adapter plate is different on the first gens. The trans itself, the way it mounts up under the truck, of course, automatic to manual transmission mounts are different. So I just kind of wung it.
Okay.
Winged it, yeah. And so start to finish, probably after work, probably a week's worth of time or so. And then once I had that together, I had to measure the drive shafts because those are different lengths now. So I had to have both of those adjusted lengthwise. The rear one gets longer, front one gets shorter. Also, I bought Owen bought his used clutch for that truck, and he's real gentle on stuff, so I didn't feel bad about getting it. But he sold to me with the flywheel. But he didn't include the spline lineup tool. So I tried to put the trans in, and I was like, wow, this is not lining up at all. And I went back and looked at actual kits. I was like, oh, I'm missing that lineup tool. So I had to use a motorcycle jack with 4x4 blocks on it and ratchet strapped, and that's a cast iron trans with a cast iron transfer case. So it's it was awful wrestling it around by myself. And there's just a lot of little things that you run into that you just kind of have to figure out as you go, but it's definitely doable. Actual trans jack would have helped, and maybe somebody to help.
Some power tools, a second set of hands, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's doable, and I think the hardest part is probably just finding good donor parts that you trust.
I mean, doing those swaps, it gets... Anytime I've ever done a swap on anything, you always try to find a whole truck.
Yeah.
Because, you don't think... You think about doing a manual swap, right? It's like, okay, well, slave cylinder, pedal, clutch, bell housing, trans. You don't think about the pedal, the cables. You don't think about those little things, the little rubber grommets, the shift boots. Yep. You don't think of this stuff. So it's like... When you start getting into those nickel and dimes, that can make a conversion kit astronomical in cost.
Yeah.
Whereas, my philosophy was, if you could find a whole donor truck, you have the rest of the truck to sell to recoup some of your money back.
Sure.
And you have all the parts that you need.
Yep.
Sure. But, a week's time as a DIY in a driveway, that's not shabby. That's not too shabby at all.
It wasn't bad. And, another unique thing, too, with doing it that way is with the first gens, the 518 and the... So there's a stock coupler between the transfer case and the automatic trans, and I found a guy on one of the forums, and he made a custom spline adapter because the splines are different from the manual trans output shaft to the transfer case input shaft. So I had to find that. I actually lucked out on that guy. I don't think he does it anymore, but it's all these little things that you just...
That's such a huge save to find that. Because you're there, and it's if you I assume you figured that out at the end.
I had been researching this so long. I had the parts for a long time before I was like, okay, I think I have everything to try this.
I'm going to park the truck and start tearing shit apart.
Yeah. I had to borrow Mom's little Hyundai for, that whole time frame. And, and when you're a first-timer, just, again, something that big, it was very intimidating. But it's, as I've kind of figured out as I've gotten older, just kind of jump into things and you'll figure it out as you go. I think it's a good approach.
I love that. The guy did months of planning, but his advice to you is just jump in and figure it out as you go.
Well, there's a difference between investigation, pre-planning, and doing the work.
Yeah.
And you can never be...
You're never
prepared for that until you just dive into
Plans mean nothing. Planning is everything. I gotcha. Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, I did a manual to an auto with my second gen when I had it, I would never go from an auto and do a manual. That swap, fuck that. I'll take shit off all day long. Putting shit in that wasn't once there, forget it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and now with that truck, the 66 I had on it, that's been pushing oil for a long time, and I kind of prepped in my head what to do in case it starts running away on me, because it was pushing a noticeable amount of oil.
Yeah.
So I was ready come she starts running away on me. But I wanted to test out our HX35 Stealth 64, and so I took all my compound stuff off, and like Chris said, I mean, I was able to do all that stuff in a matter of a couple of hours, where on any of these newer trucks, I mean, God, that's at least a full day's, if not 2 days worth of work.
Easy
It's a full day
job.
work.
Yeah.
Full day job.
And so swapped it out, and tell you what, the first fire up, I couldn't believe the sound of that turbo. I drove it in today, and I love the sound of that turbo.
How does that turbo drive compared to the compounds?
Spool up's a little bit slower, of course, but you know, especially with mechanically injected trucks versus the common rails, the tuning plays a huge role. With 12 valves and mechanical stuff, like, you're tuning it is what it is. You can't adjust around your turbos, really. I mean, you can, but it's going to take a lot of messing around. Whereas tuning, it's like, oh, different turbo, you know.
Well, you know, it's also a unique situation when you're talking an H1C. I mean, those turbos are very small, non-intercooled.
Yeah.
Like, you're not comparing like, oh, I took my stock HE351 off or my stock HX35 off,
Yep.
and I'm going to put a 64 in its place. You
Right.
know, like, completely different landscape of turbochargers.
Yes.
But coming from a compound setup, you know, those old turbos spool very fast.
Both you guys have swapped your compounds for a Stealth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On your Cummins.
Yeah, we did.
Those are pretty much brothers. Oh
Yeah,
my God.
Pretty much. Twinsies.
I need out of here.
Trucks are only
Joey's
25
got a
years
little
apart.
bit more hair than me.
Yeah, it's hot in here.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So, but overall, I mean, you towing with the truck, you know, I don't know if you've towed your girlfriend's horse trailer and horses yet, but, you know, comparably so. I mean, the turbo holds up, manages EGTs decent, you know, decent mid-range, that kind of thing.
So power-wise, it's got pretty good power. I would say with the compounds, it was easier to drive around the smoke a little bit.
Of course. More
Of course, with the NV4500, that 3 to 4 jump is a big jump. And if like I was loaded down 4th of July weekend, so of course it was like 9,500 degrees out, humid as all get out.
Perfect for any mechanical injected
Yeah.
motor to operate.
Ideal for a non-insulated, non-AC truck, you know. It was wonderful.
You
And
create your own AC, baby.
Yeah. And what was it? Yeah, cruising on the highway. I didn't have an EGT probe in it yet. I was watching my engine coolant because that's the next thing you watch.
Yeah, right.
And I would say I had to pay closer attention to my temperatures. I've got an EGT probe in there now and a boost gauge, so we can better R&D this kind of situation in this truck and this setup and everything. 12 valves in general, that turbo. But no, I mean, I would say overall, it's been pretty good. And again, it's not really a super fair comparison with these trucks and compounds do a single. But right now I would have a hard time putting the compounds back on simply because of that sound.
No, I mean,
Well, I wanted to ask this too, Joey. So now you've had this 12 valve in stock turbo, compound turbo. Now
Yep.
you're in the Stealth 64. I have also rode with you in trucks like from Illinois to Indiana, like for UCC, where you're in a much newer common rail tuned emissions equipped truck that has, you know, heated seats and cooled seats and all
Yep.
the fancy bells and whistles. What would you ever go to that? Would you ever go to like, okay, the 12 valve is like just for fun or it's just for nostalgia and now this is at my actual truck?
You know, now at this point in time, I love my 12 valves. I got a second one as like strictly the farm truck. You can drop a round bale on it and, you know, back into stuff. It's a big old flatbed. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I've got those two, but if I were to get a new truck, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility, especially like longer drives, the old 12 valves, I mean, they'll give you a migraine after too long.
Yeah. Because that sound is great, right?
I mean, from the sound and the smell. I mean,
you had a
Yeah.
45-minute ride in the morning.
Yeah.
And like you were in the truck, and I'm sure like at least when you were talking about it here, it was nothing but smiles.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at minute 48, at minute 52, you're like, okay, is this smile worth it? Like, it's brutal.
Yeah, out in the back roads and whatnot, where I live for the most part, it's fine. But you get into town here and whatnot, and it's like, God, it's not nearly as fun, especially with a trailer. And first gen's brakes are the worst brakes you will ever use in any vehicle ever. Just plain and simple. Every vehicle I drive, I'm like, wow, this has got good brakes. And like, no, this is normal. This is what good brakes feel like.
That's what normal brakes feel like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Wait, do you not start pumping the brakes at a half mile out from a stop
Yeah.
sign? What do you mean?
You better start downshifting.
I remember I had a 90 first gen.
Yeah.
Drums in the back, discs up front, and you would pump the brakes a couple times when you were going, man, and like there were times you'd hit the brakes and like you weren't slowing down, and like there were no leaks in the system. I mean,
Yep.
you got to think. I mean, at the time for me it was 20-year-old vehicle. Now 30 years.
I mean, we have listeners so young that they don't understand what we mean when we say pump the brakes because of
Or
ABS,
drum brakes
right?
for that matter.
Yeah, or
I don't
drum
think
brakes.
anything or
Yeah.
drums these days.
No.
But-
no.
Yeah.
It's just it's crazy. I always appreciate and respect the truck because I remember myself young growing up. My dad's old, one of my dad's old mechanics was, you want a motor that's going to stand the test of time. You need one of those old Dodge Railroad trucks. Well, the railroad truck that he was referring to were the old first gen 12-valve motors,
Yeah.
right? And I've seen so many of those engines. I mean, every first gen I owned, they had anywhere from 350 to 500,000 miles on them. Never a lick of an issue. I had electrical issues,
Yeah.
but I never had a mechanical issue.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Those
right.
trucks never left me stranded.
Yep.
And you don't get to experience much. The A518s are unique in their own, but you get yourself one of them Torque Flight, the 727 3-speeds. Man, that's all you need, man. Those things are tapped out 65, 70 down the highway. And,
Yep.
granted, this was 10, 12 years ago. And, 60, 65, 70, you're fine. Motherfucker, highways out here, you're doing 75, 85.
Yeah.
Like, you're getting passed by
Oh, yeah.
everybody. Like,
Semis included.
the right lane, you're a hazard in, know? So,
Yeah, and well, and answer your question. If I were to go with a new truck, it'd probably be one of the 17 plus Power Strokes. I think because what we're able to do with tuning, the platform is tried and true at this point. And my favorite part, I shouldn't say favorite, but one of my favorite parts is the aluminum body, and us here in the Rust Belt. I just love the idea of being able to drive a truck in the wintertime and not cringe every time I hear salt hit the vehicle. And
so you wouldn't stick to your roots and get another Cummins, huh?
I don't like driving my 12 hours.
I don't think we need to air the show.
It's the big selling point is aluminum body. I hate the first gen gets parked for the winter. That winter's bad luck for that truck because it's been wrecked both times in winter, and it's just those bodies are getting harder and harder to find. And even the second gen, I cover in diesel and ATF to try and help fight off the rest best I can. But one winter and it was already like, oh my Lanta.
Yeah.
Okay, just to back up real fast, you realize winter's not bad luck. You're just bad at driving in snow, right?
Well, super swampers
Statistically
in
speaking.
snow aren't great. And awful brakes.
Joey, the answer would have been, it's hell to be perfect like you, Paul.
Yeah.
That's
I understand, but I think you guys should keep trying for it.
Yeah.
No, what a blast, Joey. I really do appreciate you coming out and sharing your story about your 12-valve with our listeners. If there's a piece of advice you have out there for a new 12-valve owner, what do you think it is?
First thing to address with those trucks, whether it be automatic or manual, I would say use either your clutch or something with the auto. Already have on the table that you're going to want to build it if it's not already built. Other than that, like what I've done is just do your homework. You don't want to, especially with P-pump trucks, you can overfuel them relatively quickly, and now you're going to have a smoky, just not a very usable truck.
or potentially just hurt the motor.
Yeah, exactly. Best piece of advice. I don't know. You can't really go wrong with them, honestly. The cost effectiveness of them, like I said, I mean, you could be stupid and blow it up, and you're out $1,500. Well, part the rest of the truck out, you'll make twice that back. So.
That's good stuff. Well, hey, listeners, stick around. We got more Diesel Performance podcasts coming at you right after a quick word from our sponsors.
Upgrade the factory transmission oil cooler in your truck with the XDP Extra Cooled Direct Fit Transmission Oil Cooler. The XDP Extra Cooled Direct Fit Transmission Oil Coolers provide you with an upgraded bolt-on design. Each transmission cooler is built with a high-efficiency core to maximize cooling. Designed as a direct fit replacement, this transmission cooler comes ready to install with all the brackets, hardware, and accessories needed for installation. To find out more about the XDP Extra Cooled Direct Fit Transmission Oil Coolers, check out xdp.com or find a local dealer near you.
What is Whirly Custom Fab's thermostat bypass valve, and why is it an important upgrade for your 2017 to 2019 L5P Duramax? 2017 to 2019 L5P Duramax trucks feature a unique thermostat assembly for the Elson transmission, which allows fluid to bypass the auxiliary cooler and use engine heat in the radiator coolant to reach ideal operating temps more quickly in cold weather. When the desired temperature is reached, the thermostat is supposed to open and allow fluid to flow forward into the auxiliary cooler, which helps maintain transmission fluid temperatures at a safe level. Now the issue. This thermostat is prone to get stuck closed, so when the fluid gets hot and reaches the point that it needs to be cooled via the auxiliary cooler, the fluid is instead bypassed by the closed thermostat and returned to the transmission uncooled. Hotter fluid breaks down quicker, which leads to poor fluid performance and potentially premature damage and shortened transmission life. If you tow with your truck or live in a warm climate, this bypass plug is a must. Whether your truck is a daily driver, work truck, tow rig, or competition race truck, this is an issue that plagues all 17 to 19 L5Ps. When running one of WC Fab's shop trucks at the drag strip, they noticed temperatures reaching the unsafe zone. After some investigation, they found the auxiliary cooler up front was cool to the touch. The hot fluid was not making its way to the cooler. Upon further research, they found that even factory stock trucks were experiencing the same issue. With this discovery, the thermostat bypass plug was born. The CAD-designed, CNC-machined, anodized billet aluminum bypass plug requires a simple 15-minute installation. WC Fab has been building high-performance transmissions for the L5P platform for many years now and immediately started including this made in the USA piece with every transmission that they build. Tested in-house on both their shop trucks and customer trucks, the transmission cooler thermostat bypass plug for 2017 to 2019 L5P Duramax trucks can drop the fluid temperature from 15 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit by reducing fluid flow restriction to the trans cooler. The Exergy Performance Fuel System Saver works. If you have a CP4 equipped fuel pump, which is commonly found on the 2011 to 2016 LML Duramax, and also the early 6.7 liter Ford Power Stroke engine, they're known for failure, period. Now, most of the time, if you put a lift pump on the truck, you'll prevent a lot of the potential failures. If you do regular maintenance, you can help prevent the potential failures. But at the end of the day, there's still a risk that no matter what you do, that CP4 could fail. And when they fail, they have a track record for sending all of the metal shavings downstream. So you end up needing a whole new fuel system, new lines, new injectors, new tubes, new everything. That could be very expensive. Even if you're under warranty or you find a bundle package for a great price, there's still a lot of labor that goes into that job. The fuel system saver increases the amount of protection post CP4. So it's not going to stop your CP4 from failing. What it's going to do is that, God forbid, the CP4 gives up and it starts to send metal debris through the truck. It's going to stop it before it hits the rest of your fuel system. And that's why they call it the fuel system saver. If you have a CP4 pump on your truck, you absolutely need to give DuramaxTuner.com a call today and get yourself a fuel system saver. All right, folks, and now we're here with our super tech, Jeremy Garnett. Jeremy, how the hell are you?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for asking. Jeremy, we've had a lot of trucks coming through the shop here lately. I noticed you're making some big progress on that Hummer build.
Yes. Yeah. Starting to get some things done. Starting to get some product that were back ordered for a long time. So, yeah, we're makes progress on that, but other stuff we had to do first. So.
I love it. Hey, guys, if you want to follow along on that build, jump on over to jgarnett00 on Instagram. You'll be able to see Jeremy posting regular updates there. Also, we have a pretty cool install that I believe we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I got to do an install, a turbo install on a newer Dodge, a 15 Ram, 2500. Customer brought it in from Nevada.
Okay.
Drove up, wanted us to do the install, kept the truck for a few days, and got to install one of our new stealths on it.
Yeah, Stealth 64 HE351 VE Stealth 64 and the HE300 VG Stealth 64.
Yeah. This was a 300 VG, yep.
Yeah. So these are the newest turbo we've released over at Duramax Tuner. I know the R&D truck has had a handful of them on and off of there. But I'm guessing first one for a customer.
First install I've done on a customer's vehicle. I mean,
Nice.
I've done a ton of them on our own.
Sure.
Stuff like that on off. But
you could scrape and scratch all of our trucks, right? It's just the customer ones you got to be careful
especially Chris's. This one here is just a little bit different, just because it was a fully equipped, missions equipped truck. Virgin, never touched. I mean, a lot of aftermarket parts on it, big 40-inch tires, stuff like that. But Virgin under the hood, just.
Oh, I love that.
70K on it, and just a pleasure to work on. I didn't.
Not as much rust, right? Didn't have to get the torch out.
Exactly. No, that, and then just like, okay, everybody knows when you take something apart, you put it back together. Well, the clips don't work properly. You have to use zip ties. You have to make it look pretty.
Right.
Things like that. This was just not touched.
How'd it go, man? So now I'm pretty handy on like Duramax turbo installs, and we almost always drop the trans. I know there are a handful of mechanics out there who still want to do like a top end removal, but I think most of us like nowadays are just like, bro, we'll shave a few hours, just drop the trans and get this thing going.
I give those guys credit for doing over to I know what I can do and the time I can do it in,
yeah,
so.
exactly. What's the Cummins like though?
Pretty straightforward. It is, hangs off the side, just 6'7", just like any old 5'9".
Sure.
It is buried in there a little bit more because it does have that big actuator on it. You do have a big battery box over there. A lot of AC lines that run right above this thing. Even just getting that intercooler pipe off is more difficult than an average, 5'9" or early 6'7".
Sure.
One tip on this, though, is that you actually do have to lift the motor. So once you get the intercooler pipe, the intake off, you do have to loosen up the motor mount. And you do have to use a engine hoist, forklift, something like that. You do have to lift the motor up.
How far?
A couple inches, just because you do have to clear the studs for the new turbo to come off of the manifold.
Okay.
You just don't want to. Why pull the EGR? Why pull the manifold?
Yeah.
To do a turbo. I mean, just loosen the motor mount, lift it up. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty straightforward. It's about an 8-hour job. I've done it I've done a few of them now, so still takes my time.
It's still a full day job.
Yeah, it's a full day job. You got to be careful. You just got to take it easy, and you don't want to rush it.
Yeah, well, okay, so with emissions equipped versus a deleted truck, what are some of the differences? Obviously, EGR's in your way on an emissions equipped truck. Anything else kind of factor in there?
The exhaust. Sometimes the guys will remove that the donkey off the back of the turbo that goes in, or use an aftermarket exhaust. This one, again, just factory, so you have to make sure that factory knock sensor's still in there. And those are anybody that owns a newer Dodge knows that they're crappy.
Yeah.
So you just don't want to disturb that. And then also on that, being factory, there's a little pin on that donkey that goes into the turbocharger. So that has to line up perfectly. If it doesn't line up, then you won't be able to actually put the band clamp back on the turbo to get it back on. And it has an exhaust leak. I've seen that.
Sure.
Not so much here, but on a video that I watched, I've seen a couple guys doing that after turbo install has an exhaust leak, and they're like, "Where's it coming from? What did I do wrong?" And that pin was bent, so didn't have a fully good seat.
Gotcha.
So
gotcha. That's an easy one to miss too, because you might think like, well, it feels good, and the V-band clamp is on it, so I must be set.
Keep tightening it. So
okay. Any special tools you had to use for this project?
No, just regular everyday hand tools. Again, an engine hoist.
Right.
Actually on this particular truck, we had to use a forklift because it's 40-inch tires and a 5-inch lift. So, nice thing is it did have a big bumper on it, so you had a place to put your knee.
Sure.
So,
I love that.
the only good thing for those.
I was just going to make a swing at them too, but I love that you jumped to it. Okay, good. What's our pro tip for somebody out there getting ready to go do this?
So take your time. Test drive the vehicle after miles, burping the coolant and just miles, especially on these Rams, because on this particular truck, and then tuning. So
Right.
we put the aftermarket turbo on, so the truck just wasn't happy after, and we actually had a manifold gasket leak. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, just take your time, make sure everything's good, and then make sure you get the proper tuning if you are putting a bigger turbo on it.
That's right, man. Yeah. Guys, these turbos, these specific turbos can be dropped in, but really, you're going to get your best bang for your buck if you accompany it with our custom emissions equipped tuning as well. So I think that's an easy move. Awesome. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for sharing your time with our listeners today.
No problem. Have a good day.
Guys, stick around. We're going to have our remote support expert, Sean Lynn, coming up next. All right, folks, thanks for sticking around. Now we have one of my favorite segments of the show. This is where we talk to our remote support expert, Sean Lynn. Sean, how the hell are you?
Great. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing wonderful, man. It's a good day. This has been a great show. I'm excited for our segment this week, Sean, because I am going to be playing the role of a customer, a pretty common customer that we get over here at Calibrated Power Duramax Tuner, correct?
Oh, yeah.
So, guys, generally what happens is people will go ahead and get tunings. They get their truck. They're out there driving it a year, 3 months, 3 days, whatever. Later, they start adding other parts on. And so, Sean, you will commonly get a call where somebody calls in and says, hey, man, I've had my 07 LBZ for a few years now. You guys tuned it last year. All of a sudden, I'm getting, like, really, really crappy performance. It's like the power doesn't come on. Down low, it's really laggy. And yeah, man, I'm not happy with it. Can you guys fix it in tuning?
Yeah, we get questions like that all the time, and I would just need to know if any modifications have been made to your truck recently, and if not, then could you give me any more information on that?
Yeah, okay. The one mod I made to my truck recently was a new custom intake. So my buddy, pretty good fabricator, stacking dimes and whatnot, threw an intake together for me. It's a monster, man. It's going to pull in all of the air I could ever use.
Well, I mean, that's usually the issue right there. The factory intake piping is a lot smaller than your monster intake, so the air is going to flow slower, and the truck's going to think it's getting less air.
But it's getting more air.
But the
Because
truck
it's a bigger intake.
The truck doesn't know that, though.
Oh, okay. So what do I do?
So basically, in a situation like that, we would have you do a data log on it and take the data log and revise your tune for the larger diameter intake. And that's usually the fix for it right there.
That's excellent, man. Yeah, guys. So what happens is the mass airflow sensor is calibrated to know how much air is passing it. So by velocity, it determines volume because it already knows the size of the inner diameter of the pipe. So if you increase that inner diameter, you're changing the velocity of the air going past it. So in other words, the mass airflow sensor isn't going to calculate the correct amount of air available to the truck. So that monster intake, you may get more power out of it. Probably not a ton, but you will get more, right? So if you're the guy who's looking for every last little inch, every last little horsepower, it could work for you. Maybe not, right? But what's key there is that we have to scale the mass airflow sensor properly so that it can translate that what's going past the sensor to call for the correct amount of fuel. So this is really, really crucial on the Duramaxes because that mass airflow sensor where it sits is just very, very finicky as you start to change diameter of the piping.
Yeah, some of the companies out there like S&B will keep the mass airflow sensor in the same location as factory or very similar, so there's no tune update needed. But other companies go with a gigantic diameter and then they move it somewhere else, so it's either reading more or less. It's just something we need a data log whenever it's an intake that we're not familiar with. That's
right, absolutely. Now, and what you're going to see there is this mass airflow sensor is really a lot of customers will call and describe it as laggy. It's not actually lag. What it's doing is it's not seeing the air and it looks for air to command fuel. That's how we're able to balance the lambda limits or smoke output, right, for somebody new to diesel. So it's not seeing air, it's not seeing air, it's not seeing air, and then what'll happen very commonly is all of a sudden it'll say, oh wait, there's a lot of air, and it'll just dump it, and all your power will come on at once. So if you're like, man, my truck is really, really laggy, and then all of a sudden every time I hit 2,300 RPM, it just runs like a raped ape. Okay, we're dealing with a mass airflow sensor issue. Really, really common there.
Yeah, and the other thing is, too, sometimes when guys put their intakes together, they don't tighten everything down fully, and sometimes it takes a really long time for the mass airflow sensor reading to come up to where it needs to be, and so that would cause a laggy situation right there.
Absolutely.
Like I've been helping out a guy the past month with this same exact issue, and he's got something going on with his intake because the air reading comes up really slow, and he can feel that when he drives it.
Yeah.
You know, with his old intake, this never happened, but he's very adamant about having that new shiny intake on there. So,
A few tune revisions to get that dialed in, and that is something you should expect as an end user. Sometimes you'll get one tune revision back from your tuner, and it'll just nail it, and you're good to go, and you drive it, and you're happy. But commonly, especially as we deal with custom parts or brand new parts that are new to the market that we haven't able to, spend a week or 2 weeks dynoing here in-house, when we're doing it remotely, you may look at multiple revisions. It kind of depends on what those results are like for you, right, at the end of the day.
yeah, and every truck runs a little bit differently, so just because this works on somebody else's truck doesn't mean it's going to work on yours, and really everyone modifies their truck differently, so there's definitely a lot of variables there.
Absolutely. Well, Sean Lynn, thank you so much for stopping by the show.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Guys, stick around. Chris and I are going to be wrapping up the show right after this. Hey, Chris, I'm really glad we got a chance to have on Howdy. I think it was a great time talking to him about his 12 valve.
You gonna buy one now?
No, absolutely not.
Why not?
Not
He
even
didn't
close.
sell you?
Nah,
He didn't sell you? You might be able to actually work on something for once.
That's totally not true. You know I'd fuck that up. No, listen. Howdy loves that, and you could hear that passion, I think, come through in him talking about it. Guys, again, make sure you jump on over to our Fans of Diesel Performance podcast Facebook group. We'll have some pictures up of Howdy's truck. You guys will be able to see it, see how cool it is and how much he loves it. It really is a fun thing. And a big shout out to our other two co-host or segment hosts.
Jeremy Garnett.
Yeah.
And Sean Lynn.
Absolutely. Listeners, thanks for sticking around. We will be back next week with more Diesel Performance Podcast.
Plumes of white smoke.
Yeah.
And everybody thought it was going to catch on fire, and it didn't. So